No, my friend, darkness is not everywhere, for here and there I find faces illuminated from within. Paper lanterns among dark trees. Despite the reality of millions and millions of people being sexually abused daily, it is the very rare who have the strength and courage to come forward and share their story in a way that helps each and every one of us on the planet. These are the people who bring light into the darkness.
I hope to help the world understand how much love and encouragement and compassion and nurturing that survivors of child sexual abuse need. Because a lot of times these disclosures come into adulthood and look at a 30, 35, 40, 45-year-old adult and they can't see the wounded, 5, 8-year-old, 11-year-old child that's innocence was taken. So we've got to have those kind of eyes to be able to see this issue and to see that there's a child standing before you, even though it's in an adult body, that needs to get their voice and needs to break their silence and needs to tell their story.
These are the true heroes on our planet. They are the ones who liberate the voice, the strength, the spirit of all who have been silenced. These are the bearers of the paper lanterns.
When you're a survivor of child sexual abuse, you're always looking for someone to step in to rescue you. One day when he was doing that, and the door opened, I thought my time had come, and I thought my Samaritan, if you would, was there. Another priest walked in the door. It turns out the two of them were kind of partners in this whole process, and they really doubled up on me.
What shocks me so much is not the fact that children are abused, whether they be boys or girls. It's not the numbers and the fact that it happens. It's the everyday ordinariness of it. Because when you're talking about millions and millions of men, it's an ordinary experience. So what does that mean? That means that when you go to work, or you're sitting on a subway car, look around in the subway car, 40 men in that subway car are carrying a story.
Since 1998, the Gatehouse has been a safe place for people who have been traumatized by childhood sexual abuse to find their voice and heal in community.
It started when I was about 10 years old, and the abuse took place daily. And so it continued for quite a long period of time. And then one day my mom was home and she walked by the room and saw what was happening. And she let out a cry and continued walking. The only thing that happened was I got locked in my room for the next 2 years.
I remember being perceptive enough to understand that the mood in the room had changed, and so trying to leave the room, and then being chased for literally being chased around the house until I was caught and held down and basically sodomized by this family member.
It was an older boy that was from our neighborhood, our group. I was approximately 8 years old. My father used to own a restaurant, and it happened, the abuse happened for a few years.
When I was about 6 or 7 years old, she would take me to the closet and play games with me that at the time I really didn't understand what was going on. It was dark in there, and she would make me touch her and play little sick games in the closet with her. And it wasn't until I was older, like a lot older, that I started realizing and remembering the things that had happened.
Well, the abuse happened between the ages of 5 and 15. I let my mom know what had happened, and the whole day was like a live nightmare, having to tell what happened. And my whole family was there, and long story short of that day, I wasn't supported, I wasn't believed, and I was actually pushed out with the words, "You're disowned."
Well, the sexual abuse started, could have been when I was a baby, probably by at least 1 year old. He was 13 years older than I was. The sexual abuse continued well into my adult years. I could not emotionally break away from him.
The abuse started as a baby in the bathtub, in the baby bath. There was nowhere to protect me. You know, my father was an alcoholic.
Geez, memories I don't care, really hard to bring up and think about all the time, but I will tell you, it first started off when I was about 7 years of age. And it was by a male perpetrator, and how do I say this? I had multiple abusers, and I can even say that I was even abused by a woman. It was hard. God, it was hard. I don't know.
After a child has been sexually abused and left on their own, they begin a painful journey, attempting to make sense of something that does not make sense.
I don't even know. I'm surprised I didn't take my own life through that period of time. That over those years that it happened, and not that I didn't think of it, you know, because I act irrationally through my teenage years in school, doing stupid things like everything from cutting my wrists to taking pills to, you know, never mind what I did in my adult life, but from that time that I was abused from the age of 7 to the age of 15, my behavior was just out of control.
We lose our voice with the belief that it was our fault, and that we will hurt others, even the one who has brought horror into our life. We lose our voice with the belief that we are the only one that this has happened to, and therefore we are alone.
I had carried a lot of the shame and the guilt, and I think a lot of survivors just simply get caught in this lie that somehow they caused it, or somehow it was consensual, or they didn't tell, so then in the not telling, you go through this vicious cycle of why didn't I tell, and then of course society kind of heaps that shame back on you because they ask you why you didn't tell. So I think, like a lot of survivors, just realizing that I didn't deserve what happened to me and I shouldn't bear the shame, and I was frankly a child. I didn't have any power.
Imagine the courage it must take for a person to come out and tell the truth about what has been happening to them, to tell their deepest, darkest, most shameful secrets.
When I broke emotionally. I kind of froze in that moment. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew in that moment I would never be touched again. I sat on a swing and I swung in the backyard for hours and decided that it would be over, that the abuse would be over. And as I swung, I knew my life would be over. I knew that I would just take my life. It was no other options.
The experience of telling can be akin to a sense of stepping into a void.
I became very, very isolated is the word, and became very suicidal and just felt really alone. And so I was admitted into the nearest hospital in Belleville.
We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when adults are afraid of the light.
I found out that I was quoted and misquoted and quoted as having a personality disorder. I read things like lying, looking for attention.
I ended up having a nervous breakdown, and when I was in the hospital is when I had my first flashbacks. And at that point in time, I just thought I was crazy. I didn't understand where it was coming from. It was like someone was playing a movie in my mind that I couldn't stop, I couldn't pause it, I couldn't control when it restarted.
The experience has been likened to attempting to slay an invisible ghost, one that invades every fiber of your life, leaving you in a profound state of confusion, with the unresolved traumas of the past perpetually imposing themselves on the present moment.
The righteous anger is, yes, somebody harmed you. You have every right to have strong feeling about that. And for many, they've never expressed that anger, or if they've expressed it, they've internalized it. It's been self-harming. They've expressed their anger. They may have lots of failed relationships. So again, it's not serving them well, and the way they're coping with their anger.
I was in a cycle of rage, anger, and hatred. And that's all I felt towards my parents. They're both dead now. But every day I was just sitting there thinking about the sexual abuse, how that had ruined my life, how that had taken my life. And now I'm in physical pain for the rest of my life because of what you did to me. And I didn't do anything to deserve this. I was an innocent child, and you did this to me.
Regardless of whether the anger is internalized or externalized, the result is the same: profound alienation from self and from the rest of the world. The resultant anger is only one aspect of how the entire course of a child's life is interfered with. Remember that aside from being dependent, children are also still evolving.
I never did drugs or I never did alcohol, but I started dancing. I did some dancing. That was out of my character. But what I got from that experience was being with other girls who went through the same thing that I did. And I think that was where I started to realize I wasn't alone in a lot of what I went through. And
Did you ever share those stories?
oh, really out loud. Like it was like as if it was common.
Trauma unaddressed simply does not go away on its own.
Being depressed was just everyday life, and not having any sense of joy in my life. I mean, I had a spectacular commercial career by most people's standards. I've traveled literally all over the world, been to 30 different countries. I've managed operations in 8 or 9 different countries. I never enjoyed a moment of it. I could be promoted one day and I would be worried about getting fired the next for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And it's that insecurity and the fear, a fear of success, a fear of failure, all those things jumbled together.
Well, really, I think I was going through the motions of living. I had no joy in my life. I did not enjoy my children when they were small because I couldn't. I guess I couldn't let myself enjoy. I had so low self-esteem, such hatred for everything. And it just kept going until, like I say, when I crashed at mid-50s, I really didn't know how to approach it with my wife. I knew I had to tell her, but I was scared, I guess. I guess I was scared because if she rejected me, I wouldn't be here today. No, I couldn't have dealt with that.
And when you say you wouldn't be here today,
I would have committed suicide. Oh, I know I would have.
I had no hope, and I decided that's it. On my 60th birthday, I'm checking out. And I started stockpiling pills. I stockpiled pills, prescription pills, for over 2 years, for about 2.5 years.
It is not uncommon to feel like there is no way out of the suffering for people who have been traumatized by childhood sexual abuse.
To this day, I still feel my younger brother. He committed suicide because of this, because I know he was abused as well. And I feel I carry this around all the time. I have no idea why I even carried on as long as I have. I guess maybe I always had some glimmer of hope that I might get through this.
When someone is traumatized by childhood sexual abuse, the question ultimately becomes, what is the way out of a situation that feels seemingly impossible? Answers often come in wondrous ways.
Survivors of child sexual abuse are extremely strong people. They're extremely tough because we survive under the worst of odds and of circumstances. And to have survived this day, 30 years later, to have survived a very intentional act of suicide, and to be living and to be breathing said that I had a strong spirit inside of me.
The hardest part of this journey is that first step, is telling someone else that this happened to you. It takes all the strength and courage that you have, and I know it.
And once that is done, what you then see is that you no longer have that sense of imprisonment that you've carried around.
Oh my God, I was scared as hell. I was scared as hell. I've carried this bloody thing for over 40 years, and finally, after all this time, I'm finally gonna get a chance to talk to somebody to deal with it. I was so overwhelmed with guilt and shame and all these other feelings at the time. I was scared as hell when I came in the door.
You know what you've gone through, and then to hear other men say exactly the same thing that you're feeling, or your anxieties, your lack of friends, your lowest self-esteem, and you suddenly realize, my God, that happened to everybody. It's not just me. And then you realize, okay, I can start dealing with it now.
We're not asking to be fixed. I just want to be heard. You know, listen to my story. If you can relate. If you can't, that's great, but don't label me and don't judge me.
And I know it's very difficult to understand, maybe sitting at home thinking, oh my God, you have no idea what I'm going through, and I'm such a horrible person, and this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I still have those moments. I just had one the other day. But you know what? That moment lasts like 5 minutes now. And it doesn't last 3 weeks, a month, a year. It lasts very short. And it's just because you grow and you heal and you learn, and you just have to believe that it can all be okay, and maybe even better than you ever imagined. I think that's what I would say.
If there was one thing that I would want people to know is you have the capacity. It is in you to look around you and figure out what is your path away from that journey. And in that path, the greatest support I found is in connecting with people. So as you discover your capacity, you reach out and connect, and that's how you make your way. That's what I would say.
What is done at the Gatehouse is profoundly simple. Creating the space for human beings who have been harmed by childhood sexual abuse to be embraced by empathy and compassion. This is not therapy, and it's not analysis. This is simply the liberation of voice, capacity, and spirit.
It's really interesting to watch the transformation in that 15 weeks, and to see people move from such fear and hopelessness sometimes, despair that there could ever be any difference in their life. And that's the magic of what group is.
Just giving them a voice, which is what you do, and empowering them and allowing them to share their stories without judgment and without imposing guilt or shame on them, that's more powerful than any pill or anything out there.
To see them opening them up and telling their story in their words is a very powerful thing to be part of. I felt honored to be part of their recovery.
There are 3 truths. The first is that childhood sexual abuse happens pervasively everywhere. The second is that we, in general, don't believe the first truth. And the third is that we all have the capacity to illuminate the silence. The simplicity of the third truth is profoundly ironic.
Light sometimes has to go where there's darkness if we want to create light. And I'm very similar to Fred. I can see now that there's lights everywhere. Where at one time I thought there was no way in my lifetime I would see those lights. So, you know, and I'm often reminded too is that it not only takes a person and a family and a village, but it takes a country and the planet to grow together. And with you guys going out and speaking to 200 different countries, it brings that normalization that we're all in this together, we're all interconnected, and then the compassion. We want to heal together. In some ways what we're doing is we're liberating people's ability to experience love in their, like a real, true, honest human experience of love.
But underneath all that pain, all that suffering, all that guilt, all that shame, none of it is your guilt and shame. Underneath that is the person you were always supposed to be, that you were meant to be, that you started out being, that you came into this world being. Underneath all of that is the real you. You're worth it.